My husband spent 2 years turning all our friends against me by lying about who I was. I stayed silent. Then I invited every single one of them to his big work presentation where I exposed everything he'd said about me in front of his entire company. My husband Matt and I were married for 5 years before everything fell apart. We met in college, dated for 3 years, got married young. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. We had the same friend group, went to the same events, shared the same life. For the first few years, it was good. Not perfect, but good enough that I thought we'd be okay. Then Matt started changing. It was subtle at first. He'd make little comments about me to our friends when we were all hanging out. Jokes about how I was always late or how I overreacted to things. Everyone would laugh and I'd laugh too because they seemed harmless. Just husband and wife teasing. But over time, the comments got meaner. He'd say I was dramatic, that I made things harder than they needed to be, that I couldn't handle stress. He'd frame it like he was venting, but really he was planting seeds. Our friends started treating me differently. They'd invite Matt to things, but not me. When I'd show up to group dinners, people would be polite but distant. I'd try to join conversations and people would change the subject. I felt like I was losing my mind, like I'd done something wrong, but nobody would tell me what. Matt would act confused when I brought it up, say I was imagining things, that our friends loved me, that I was being paranoid. I trusted him. For years, I trusted him. I thought maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was reading into things that weren't there. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't prove it. Then I found the messages. Matt had left his laptop open one day while he was in the shower. A notification popped up from our friend group chat, the one I wasn't in anymore. I didn't even know there was a group chat without me. I clicked on it before I could stop myself. What I saw destroyed me. Matt had been talking about me for months, calling me names, saying I was unstable, that I made his life difficult, that he had to walk on eggshells around me. He told them I'd been acting crazy, that I accused him of things he didn't do, that he was worried about my mental health. Our friends were responding with sympathy, telling him they understood, asking if he was okay. Nobody questioned him. Nobody asked my side. I scrolled back through weeks of messages, found voice notes where he mocked the way I talked, found screenshots of texts I'd sent him taken out of context to make me look irrational. He'd crafted this entire narrative where I was the villain and he was the suffering husband, and everyone believed him. I also found private messages between Matt and his best friend, messages where Matt laughed about how easy it was to turn people against me, how he just had to play the victim and everyone took his side. He said it was funny watching me try to figure out why people were acting weird, that I looked pathetic trying to fit in when everyone already thought I was the problem. I felt sick. The person I'd married, the person I'd trusted with everything, had been systematically destroying my reputation for years, and I'd had no idea. I'd blamed myself, thought I was losing friends because of something I did, when really, it was him. It was always him. I wanted to confront him right then, wanted to scream and throw his laptop at him and demand answers, but I didn't, because I knew Matt. I knew he'd deny it, turn it around on me, say I was invading his privacy, that I was proving his point about being unstable. He'd gaslight me until I questioned what I'd seen with my own eyes. So, I didn't say anything. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every voice note, every lie he'd told about me. I backed it all up to a cloud drive he didn't have access to, and I started planning. Over the next few weeks, I paid closer attention to how Matt operated. He'd come home from work and vent about his day, but then he'd slip in comments about me, say I'd been in a bad mood that morning, that I'd snapped at him over nothing. None of it was true, but he'd say it so casually that it sounded believable. He was building a case against me in real time, and I was the only one who could see it. Our friends continued to ice me out. I stopped getting invited to anything. When I'd ask Matt about plans, he'd say nothing was happening. Then I'd see photos on social media of everyone hanging out without me. When I'd bring it up, Matt would act surprised, say he thought I was invited, that he must have forgotten to tell me. But I knew he was lying. He was the one controlling the invitations. I also noticed Matt talking to his family about me. He'd call his mom and complain about our marriage, say things were hard, that he was doing his best but I wasn't making it easy. His mom started calling me to check in, asking if everything was okay, if I was taking care of myself, She'd used this concerned voice that made me feel like Matt had told her I was falling apart. Like she was worried about me, but really she was worried about him having to deal with me. I felt completely isolated. The person I was supposed to trust most in the world was using that trust to destroy me. And everyone believed him because he'd spent years building credibility as the good guy, the patient husband, the one trying his best with a difficult wife. But I had evidence now. Screenshots, recordings, proof of everything he'd said and done. I just needed the right moment to use it. I needed a stage big enough that he couldn't deny it, that everyone would have to face the truth at the same time. That's when I found out about Matt's presentation. He worked in marketing, and his company was hosting a big event. Matt had been chosen to present their new campaign to the entire company plus clients and partners. It was a huge deal for him. He'd been talking about it for weeks, how important it was, how it could lead to a promotion, how everyone who mattered would be there. He'd invited all our friends, made a whole thing about it, said they should come support him, watch him succeed. He'd even invited his family, his parents, his siblings, everyone. This was his moment. His big night where everyone would see how great he was. And I was going to be there too, not to support him, to expose him. The night of the presentation, I got ready quietly. Matt had barely spoken to me all day, was too focused on his big moment to pay attention to me. He left early to set up. I followed an hour later, wore a nice dress, did my hair, wanted to look put together, wanted to look like the stable, confident person I actually was, not the crazy, unstable wife Matt had made me out to be. I sat in the back of the room, watched all our friends file in, watched his family take their seats near the front. Matt was on stage, setting up his slides. He looked nervous but excited. This was everything he'd worked for, his big break. The presentation started. Matt began talking about the campaign, about the strategy, about the creative vision. Everyone was engaged, impressed. I waited, let him get comfortable, let him think everything was going according to plan. Then halfway through his presentation, I sent a message to the event coordinator, told them there was an urgent video that needed to be shown, said it was part of the presentation that Matt had asked me to upload. They switched the screen from Matt's slides to the video file I'd sent. The screen changed. Matt stopped talking mid-sentence, looked confused. Then audio started playing. His voice, from the voice notes I'd found. Matt mocking me, laughing about turning our friends against me, calling me pathetic. The room went silent. Everyone stared at the screen. Then the screenshots appeared. Messages where Matt called me crazy, where he told our friends I was unstable, where he laughed about manipulating them, where he bragged about how easy it was to make everyone think I was the problem. Every lie, every manipulation, every cruel thing he'd said about me displayed for everyone to see. Matt tried to speak, tried to explain, but nothing came out. He looked at me in the back. I stared back, didn't move, didn't react. Just let him see that I knew, that I'd always known, that I'd been waiting for this moment. Our friends looked horrified. Some were reading the messages on the screen. Others were looking at Matt with disgust. His boss stood up and asked what was happening. If this was part of the presentation, Matt stammered, said no, that this was a mistake, that someone had hacked the system. But everyone had already seen it. Everyone had already heard his voice. There was no denying it. I stood up, walked down the aisle toward the door. As I passed our friends, some of them reached out, tried to stop me, to apologize. I didn't stop. I just kept walking. A few followed me out, asked if I was okay, if the messages were real. I told them they'd seen the proof. They could decide for themselves what to believe. Matt's family sat frozen. His mom was crying. His dad looked furious. Matt was still on stage, standing there as his big moment collapsed around him. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd lied for, gone in minutes. Selves what to believe. Matt's family sat frozen. His mom was crying. His dad looked furious. Matt was still on stage, standing there as his big moment collapsed around him. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd lied for, gone in minutes. I left that night and never went back. filed for divorce the next week. Matt tried to contact me, sent messages saying it was a misunderstanding, that he'd been venting and I'd blown it out of proportion, that I'd humiliated him for no reason. But I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He'd spent years humiliating me quietly. I just did it once publicly. Our friends reached out one by one, apologized for believing Matt, for icing me out, for not asking my side of the story. Some I forgave, some I didn't. Not everyone deserved a second chance. Not everyone had been innocent in how they treated me. But the ones who genuinely felt bad, who took responsibility for not questioning Matt's narrative, those friendships I tried to rebuild. Matt lost his job. The company didn't fire him immediately, but the presentation disaster destroyed his reputation. Clients didn't want to work with him. Colleagues avoided him. He ended up leaving a few months later. I heard through mutual connections that he struggled to find work after that people in the industry had heard what happened, that his name was damaged. His family reached out to apologize too, said they'd had no idea, that Matt had painted such a convincing picture of me being unstable that they believed him without question. I accepted their apology but made it clear I didn't want a relationship with them. They'd enabled Matt's behavior by never questioning him, by always taking his side. That wasn't something I could just forgive and forget. The divorce was finalized within a year. I got everything I asked for. Matt didn't fight it, didn't have the energy or the credibility to argue. He signed the papers and disappeared from my life. I spent the next year rebuilding, went to therapy to process the emotional abuse. Because that's what it was. Matt had emotionally abused me by isolating me from friends, by gaslighting me into thinking I was the problem, by systematically destroying my reputation and mental health. Therapy helped me understand that none of it was my fault, that I'd been married to someone who enjoyed manipulating people, who got satisfaction from playing the victim while tearing me down. I also focused on my career, on hobbies, on building a life that was mine. I made new friends, people who didn't know Matt, who didn't know that version of me he'd created. I got to be myself again, got to exist without someone narrating a false version of my life to everyone around me. What I learned from all of this is that silence can be more powerful than confrontation. I could have confronted Matt the day I found those messages, could have screamed and cried and demanded he admit what he'd done, but he would have denied it, would have twisted it, would have made me look exactly like the unstable wife he'd been describing. So I stayed silent, gathered evidence, waited for the perfect moment. And when that moment came, I didn't need to say a word. The truth spoke for itself. I also learned that people will believe what they want to believe. Our friends wanted to believe Matt because it was easier, because he was charming and convincing, because questioning him meant admitting they'd been wrong about me. But when faced with undeniable proof, they couldn't hide behind his lies anymore. They had to face what they'd participated in, and some of them couldn't handle that truth. Matt thought he'd won, thought he'd successfully painted me as the villain while he played the hero. He thought his big presentation would be the culmination of his success. Instead, it became the stage for his downfall, and I was the one who orchestrated it. If you were in my position, would you have exposed him publicly or walked away quietly? Subscribe if you believe the truth always finds a way to come out.